Shalom, I am Rabbi Shaul Praver. You're watching Rabbi Rock. We have the great pleasure of having Brigitte Gabriel with us here today. Shalom, welcome to Rabbi Rock.
Shalom, thank you.
You know, oftentimes Americans particularly only find out about a country, whether it be Afghanistan, Lebanon, when there's a war or there's something bad happening.
That's true.
And I think a lot of people might be surprised to find out that there actually is a independent country called Lebanon, and it really isn't Syria. Can you?
That's true. It isn't Syria, and it is a Christian country. A lot of people, when they think about the Middle East, they think the Middle East is they're all Muslims, they're all Arabs. Well, there is a country in the Middle East called Lebanon, founded on Judeo-Christian values, with a Christian president. When we got our independence from France, the majority of the population were Christians. We built the country, we are the descendants of the Phoenicians, and we are good in business. And in a very short period of time, after getting our independence from France, Lebanon became Paris of the Middle East, the banking capital of the Middle East. That's where all the Arab sheikhs and the Arab millionaires came to party and have a good time, because Lebanon offered them the good culture of the Middle East, but it was westernized with Western values. They were able to be free, enjoy drinking, dancing, going out to the beaches with their families, and enjoy a taste of freedom that did not exist in their country.
How many Arabs, Muslim Arabs were there approximately in the time that you're describing now?
And when we got our independence, the Christians were about 60 to 65%, the Muslims were about 40%. But that number began to change over the years, and in about 30-40 years, the Muslims became the majority and we became the minority.
Why did that happen?
Because the Muslims are allowed to marry up to 4 wives at a time, not in a lifetime, but at a time. While the Christians get married to one spouse until death do us part, we don't have a lot of children. A Christian family might have 2, 3, maybe 4 children by a stretch, while a Muslim who is married to 4 wives can have easily 5 or 10 children out of every wife. So while the Christians focused on sending their children to college and they were able to educate them, the Muslims multiplied themselves into poverty and they were not able to do that, and it just continued. It was a numbers game and we lost in that game. But the problem became aggravated with the influx of the Palestinians out of Jordan. Yasser Arafat tried to throw King Hussein out of power and in order to create a base in which to fight Israel. When he failed to do that in Jordan, King Hussein kicked him out along with 250,000 Palestinians, and Lebanon was the only country that took them in. None of the other Arabic countries wanted them.
That was the Black September event.
That was the Black September event. So with the influx of the Palestinians out of Jordan and them being mostly Muslims, they put their heads together with the Muslims in Lebanon and declared jihad on the Christians in 1975, and that's how the civil war started.
You know, they say that there's a Palestinian country called Jordan because 90% of the population are Palestinian, but it sounds like there's a second Palestinian country called Lebanon.
That's what Yasser Arafat tried to do. When he failed to do in Jordan, create a base in which to fight Israel, he tried to do the same thing in Lebanon. And he succeeded, because in Lebanon, we already had our problems with the Muslims. We were not as strong as Jordan. King Hussein was very strong. He had a history. He was a royal family. He had his royal guards. He was much more organized and much more tougher on his enemy than we were. We as Christians, because we are governed by Judeo-Christian values, we always forgive, we are more tolerant, we are more patient, we always think the best out of people, we never assume the worst, and we always treat people with kid gloves. We don't strike hard like the Muslims strike hard their enemy. We saw the writing on the wall, but we didn't do anything about it. Because we never thought for a second that our neighbor, the moderate Muslims, our friends, even the Palestinians that we took in, that we built refugee camps for them, we gave them jobs. Some of the Palestinians even have Lebanese passports. We never thought they can turn against us in such a savage way.
Was it always this way when you were growing up as a young girl? Did you have a lot of Muslim Arab friends that you played well with?
Yes, my best friend in elementary school was a Muslim, Khadija Ghanim. She was my best friend. She came from a Muslim town nearby. I went to a Christian private school, and the well-to-do Muslims send their children to private Christian schools because that's where the good education was. We didn't have any problem as a child. I didn't know anything or feel anything. I just knew that she did not attend our Bible classes. We had to split in the class when we went to our studies, and they just played in the playground. And of course, we, the Christian kids, always complained, how come they get to play and we're stuck here studying the Bible? But the interesting thing is the culture, the Lebanese culture, was not that friendly to Israel. Even though we were a Christian country, we were very much brainwashed and affected and influenced by the neighboring Arabic countries. For example, the attitude towards Israel. All the Muslim countries hated Israel. In Lebanon, all we heard on television, because it's government controlled, the media, all we heard was Israel, Israel is the devil, the Jews are evil, the Jews are barbaric. The only time we would have peace in the Middle East is when we kill all the Jews and drive them into the sea. As a child, my father owned a restaurant. I spent a lot of time in my dad's restaurant. We had a TV in the restaurant, the only restaurant with a TV. So the TV was on. In the evening, people would come to eat dinner, and politics was the topic. And I would overhear people talk about Israel. And we would watch in the evening news the Palestinians coming into Lebanon. They played a lot of pictures of Palestinians in refugee camps. So people would talk about how evil the Jews were, how terrible the Jews were, that this is what's creating all the problem. The Christians didn't talk about it that much, neither this or that. We just listened, we were observant. But in school, we didn't have a problem as children. As far as I recall, because the war started, I was 10 years old. So up until the age of 10, my best friend was a Muslim.
So had you met a Jew at all?
Well, as a child, I didn't think I will ever meet a Jew. But when the war started and we were surrounded to be slaughtered, our back was to Israel. I come from a town called Marjayoun in South Lebanon, which is about 4 or 5 kilometers from the Israeli border. When the Muslims surrounded us to slaughter us, we were either going to be slaughtered by the Muslims, and we knew what our fate was going to be because we already heard the stories.
How old were you at this time?
10 years old. Or we go to the Jews for help. But we knew of the two evils. The Jews in Israel are not going to slaughter us because after all, we had more shared values with them than we had with the Muslims. So the elders in my town, a few of the elders under the cover of the night, went to Israel and begged for help, and they waved down an Israeli patrol driving in the middle of the night, and they said, we are the Christians from this town, we are surrounded by the Muslims and the Palestinians, and we have no weapons, we have no protection, they cut off food supplies, and we need your help. You know, if you're not going to help us, we're going to die. And Israel said, come back in 24 hours and we'll let you know. And within 24 hours, Israel, they arranged a meeting where high officials came up from Jerusalem, and they met at the borders, and Israel decided to help the Christians.
What year are we talking about?
75, 76.
Okay.
Israel brought food for the children, blankets for the elderly. Israel even brought in bomb shelters because most of the families, nobody even had bomb shelters.
And this is right near the border?
Right near the border.
Okay.
Now, during that time, my house was bombed by the Palestinians and the Muslims, and I was wounded and buried under the rubble. And after I left the hospital, I was in the hospital for 2.5 months. And when I came home, home was no longer the home I left. My new home became a bomb shelter underground, no electricity, no water, and very little food.
It was destroyed from the bomb?
My house was destroyed from the bomb. And the bomb shelter was behind our restaurant, and my father had used it as storage. So the first few weeks we slept in cardboard boxes. You know, the cardboard boxes for the drinks, and my father had bought a fridge, and we had a big cardboard box that my mother and I slept in, which was the fridge box. And we thought in 2 weeks this ordeal will be over. Well, this went on and on and on, and after a month or two we realized we need to put some mattresses down and sleep, and that's how we survived. And That's how I ended up living for 7 years of my life, from age 10 to age 17.